like in this red little sweet spot, then why do we still hear those statements? And the reason is, I don't know, please discuss. Oh, wait, please discuss. That's the solution to the problem. Because really, like if you think in those bubbles, then it's very close to what you see in the world, right? You have your echo chambers, leave them. Don't only hang out with product managers, the business analysts who are telling you that tech people don't care. They do. Stop talking about business people claiming that they just don't care about quality, because they do. If you talk to a salesperson and ask them what really matters, they will tell usability matters. If you ask a customer what's most important to them, it works and is up and running. And if you tell an engineer that they just built and shipped something that got the company $1 million, you're going to make them happy, because engineers care about business people care about usability, and don't forget, basically everybody cares about everything, because that's the red, nice little sweet spot. But the thing is, you'll only realize that everybody wants the same thing if you start talking with them. And the reason why we sometimes make decisions that seem like we want something else is because there's a lack of knowledge, right? As a product manager, as a business person, I might not be aware of the importance of tech work because I just don't know those things. But if we learn them and start a conversation, and if we all start working together on having this shared understanding of the thing that we really want to build. And that's how you build an effective collaboration. Realize that everybody that you work with really, really wants the same thing, which is a product that's viable, usable, and feasible, feel important. And then the rest is really just listening, learning, and talking to each other. And I told you I'll be preachy, so sorry again. Thank you very, very much for listening to my rant. And now I'd like to hand over to Lana for the discussion moderation.
Thank you so much for sharing this. I prepared some questions, and I already see some questions posted. But my first question that I just got, how to get into this mindset? Because I imagine myself by default think, oh yeah, maybe salespeople, they just care about their bonuses, or developers just care about building interesting things rather than a better product. So how do I shift this mindset?
I think one thing that helps is, or one thing that helped me, because it's not like I was born thinking like that. It's actually a fairly new realization. Understand that, do you know the concept of pronoia is the opposite of paranoia? It's strongly believing that the entire world is out there to help you, not to get you. So, and that really helps. And it's really mostly true. Like generally everybody wants to do good. Everybody wants to be helpful. And pretty much every single time we see a conflict or we see a misunderstanding, it's really a knowledge gap and a communication gap. That's what I think.
I see. Well, I'm going to practice in my meditations probably.
Yeah.
I see a question in the chat from Maximilian. Maximilian, do you want to share it with us, or should I read?
I mean, that was just like in the context when you had your diagrams, and then basically just cut out. Maybe I just misunderstood what you said, but my question there was more, right? You had that business bubble, and then you kind of crossed it out and only left it with product and tech.
Yes.
Right. So
it's not.
I mean, I understand what you say. Everybody is trying to do the right thing, but then again, everybody doesn't always have the proper data to make good decisions, right? And,
yes.
and very often you just say like, yeah, this maybe viable, but it would bring us no money, right? And also, you're as a PM, you're in that center where you say, this is what we're going to build and this is what we're not going to build, right? Because this would bring us the biggest bang from the buck. So I think you cannot cross that out. Or I'm misunderstanding what you meant by that.
Yeah, it depends how you read it. So this is how I read this. Yes, that's the slide I want to be on. So this is a depiction of possible realities. That's how I see it. So like here on the right, the technology bubble is all of the technology in the world that exists. And yes, there is in reality technology that's feasible but not desirable. So like the overlap, I hope you can see my mouse. It's like the overlap between the human values and the technology bubble. That's the real thing. And also technology outside, it's a real thing. Saying there is a viable business idea that is not producing a desirable or selling an actual existing product, those don't exist. Yes, you can have ideas, but those aren't viable ideas. They are just ideas.
Now, this is black and white, right? There's a lot of gray in between. So, right, a business idea or something that you want to build isn't necessarily, yes, this is viable, this is not viable. There's so much gray in between, right? But I think we're focusing here on the wrong thing. This was just like a small comment. I don't want to.
So when I say viable, is you can actually make honest money and live off it. It's not like it's not a great idea. It's not something that.
Unicorn.
It's really nothing else. It's really all about the money when I say that. But thanks for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you. Mika, I see you raised your hand. Did you want to?
Yeah, I was just thinking about what you said, that how do you get started involving people from different departments and collaboration. What I've noticed and what's my experience is to keep this kind of curious mindset and frame the question in a way that going to discuss with the salespeople or the engineering or the UX or the customer service and asking them, hey, what do you think is able to, what do you think is important now? What are your customers facing? What is preventing us getting there? And keeping a curious mindset and trying to frame it as a discussion. What can we do together to help our customers to achieve the value that we want to deliver?
Yeah, I love that idea, the idea of doing something together, right?
Yeah, thank you for this comment. And maybe then the question from my side to spice it up. Something like in terms of collaboration between product and tech, is there any specific frameworks or tools that can facilitate like this approach that you're sharing here, or it's just a mindset that we need to change?
I can think of a couple of techniques. So I think the most important thing is the mindset. Something else we do is that we really talk a lot and we make decisions together. We really act as, so the concept of like the first team, right? Like your immediate peers that you work with.
Yeah.
We are one. The product and tech and also engineering. It's like we all work together. We all share the same goals. Well, that's one thing that really, really helps if you have shared goals, if you don't have product goals and tech goals.
That is like, yeah, that's exactly actually was one of my questions, like in terms of organizational structure, how do you see it? Because almost in every organization that are there's a separate product department with a product lead, like a VP or a CPO, and there's a separate department with a tech CTO lead. What do you think about this structure? Is it effective?
Me, I don't think it really matters because I can very, very easily ignore structures and look at people instead. So.
And what would be your recommendation for others, like who cannot or like who cannot ignore the structures so easily?
I don't know. Maybe somebody else from the.
You can like for me it's thing that like take the agency in the things that you can affect. So if you are working in a large corporation or large organization, just pick people and go discuss with you. Like make your own small product trio. Like grab a salesperson, grab a designer, grab a developer, and just chat, have a coffee meeting and start from somewhere. Build your small little circle first. You don't need to change the whole organization structure to get started. You can easily get started by individual people. Walk to somebody. They are human people. They very probably want to help you.
Thanks for this input. You were raising your hand. You wanted to add something else, or was about this?
Yeah, just like if you ask about the frameworks, I personally like the concept that Teresa Torres has introduced about the product trio. I'll link the blog to the chat. So that's a fantastic book that I highly recommend. And it discusses about this kind of work where 3 people, so the product representing the business, the designer representing, well, the usability, and then the developer representing the feasibility, collaborate early on together to experiment and learn about these things so that we get the broad perspective on different things and the features that we build and experiments we run very early on, instead of just PM defining, UX designing, developers building. So frame it as a collaboration from the get-go.
Thanks for sharing. Do you have experience with this approach? I wonder how to like move in this scenario from conversations. Yeah, you get in circle, you speak. What usually comes up after these conversations?
What do you mean by that? Like we have been running this or experimenting with this for a short amount of time. And like we are small companies, so we don't have very large or strict rules, but we have been we are very used to collaborating from the past as well. So how we do it is just we have the UX designer, we have me as a product manager, and then a developer, and then we just do these customer journeys together. We try to interview together, and we at least share the interview snapshots together. And then we try to figure out and ideate together. And then when it makes sense, we involve others as well. For example, sales, customer success. We co-create with our customers and stakeholders instead of siloing each other.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing your experience as well. Piotr, hi, I see you raised your hand. Do you have any question?
No, maybe another remark to that, and a framework that is pretty useful and is also related to Scrum and Agile is LESS, which is not the greatest shortcut of large-scale Scrum. It was invented by Craig Larman and the second guy that I always forgot, but in general, it's about getting rid of silos and have a very focused on the product approach. And it usually requires at some point in time a big structural changes if you want to destroy the silos, but it also starts a bit like Mika said with discussing and involving the volunteers. Like you build curiosity, you build some teams around the concept of less, build some kind of less bubble, and then you make other people interested in how they are doing in this less bubble, how they cooperate together, how they build features, and at some point in time, you can get the whole company in very simplified structure that is very customer oriented and product oriented. Yeah. So yeah, I also send a link to the chat to Les.
Thank you. Yeah, I see it. And from your experience, like with this LESS framework, is it better, I assume, to start with just one feature, one epic, one idea, one project, rather than
one product?
One product.
One product is the best approach. I use it for a single product, but I know that, for example, there was some kind of, I know that in other companies it was not always possible to get the whole product into this process. So some kind of area, some kind of module, sometimes the tech module, not exactly from usability point of view, and at some point it's growing when you take care of it, of course. But yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Mohammed, I see you raised your hand. Hi.
Yeah, hello. Thanks. It's very interesting to hear other thoughts on the topic as well.
I think we have some problems hearing you, Mohammed. Is it just me now? No, it's. Can you maybe get
me?
Yeah, now it's better. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Yeah. So I have to admit I'm not very big on ceremonial frameworks like Scrum and these very complicated systems. But I do want to mention, these bubbles. The problems happen when you start having conflicts, and the conflicts happen when you have to compromise on resources. And this is really like where things, everybody wants to help everybody, and everyone wants great products and great tech. The problem really starts bubbling up when the resources available are insufficient to create the ideal world that was set out to be. And so this is there's something around, I'm not really sure exactly how to frame it, but I think there has to be some sense of responsibility for the whole thing together, including the resources, and just figuring out how to optimal. So I think thinking from an optimality perspective probably takes away some of the emotional or the misconceptions, the emotional misconceptions, because I think it's true that everybody wants to help everyone, but it only happens when they have the bandwidth and the capacity to do so. Otherwise, it becomes really kind of a different kind of games. In my company, we're very small, so we don't really have such big boundaries between product and engineering, and the product is engineering oriented, so the people who are building a product, they are also likely to use it. But I can imagine, I've seen it in other companies and clients we worked with, where there's the larger the gap between the engineering and the business by a lot of different layers and different priorities, and not enough staffing and resources, really starts cropping out these problems. Just a thought. I don't know. There's something in these three bubbles. Perhaps I feel like if we could find some circle for a finance person, or like a funding energy source or something like that, would make a big difference, because the business is supposed to provide this, but it takes time for the business to be able to sustain this. So during that time, it's really like a shared responsibility of how to get there.
Yeah. I have two comments to that. One of them is if you don't have enough people to work on all of the things that you want to do, to two things come to mind. One of them is either you have a staffing problem or you have a prioritization problem, and both are solvable. So what we do for staffing is that we also all sit together and we talk about it. And then we're like, hey, okay, like for this specific topic, if you really want to focus on that, let's hire more people here. And then like, it's not like engineering doesn't make a hiring decision. A team makes a hiring decision, and a team has one of each, basically. And for prioritization, you can work, you have to set up a prioritization framework that isn't biased towards one of the three, but sees them as equally contributing value. Because again, nobody will pay for an undesirable product, right? Nobody will pay for a non-feasible product. Yeah. So that's why if you say, if you have a prioritization methodology that is heavily biased towards features, like many are, then you are set up for conflicts, because don't give the others even a chance to talk about. You don't have a way to bring them into discussion, right?
Yeah, right. And so I think the way I would describe it is that it's not business viability only, but it's also sustainability. So the sustainability of the whole product together, so I think a methodology that takes into all three bubbles into account, and can do that in a sustainable way. That's exactly what we are looking for. I think the problem is, as you already mentioned, in many cases, a lot of product organizations are very feature oriented, like because they feel that they have to compete, the market that they're entering is very competitive, they need to raise funding, etc., etc. So the sustainability, I really think that a lot of the problems that we see in product organizations today is because overinflated expectations and like bad business sustainability path. This is really the key issue.
Well, that's and not an easy problem to fix, Andrea, but I was interested because you mentioned about the prioritization, and that the prioritization can be skewed towards features, and there is no room to bring other opinions. How do you solve it in your organization?
We have, so we'll be using some, how is it called? Anyways, forgot the name. It's a framework. What you do is you define your drivers, and then you weigh every single work item that you have by those 4 drivers. The 4 drivers that we have are new functionality, UX, scalability, and organizational improvements. And if you have organizational improvements also in there, you also somehow start tackling the sustainability issue. And then everything that we work on, we don't only put features in our bucket list of things to do, we put everything that we could possibly work on. And you just weigh everything by those things, which means whenever we make a decision what to work on, we are forced to consider the impact that it has on everything. And we consider those together, right? We don't have like the magic product manager knowing all. And it works obviously not perfectly because it's still the real world, but it's helping. I find it helping.
I see. So if we're talking about product and tech collaboration, is understood, so then the tech team can also bring their items. It can like refactoring, move to Jenkins, or like all this type of technical ideas.
Yes. And then think about it in the context of, is it valuable? If you move to Jenkins, it's probably going to speed up your development processes. So yay, there's value. Or if you move away from Jenkins, they want to speed up your development processes.
And who, because then you sit together, you discuss, with the tech team, you discuss who has the final say in this prioritization.
The data. It's the framework is a given, and then the formula does the rest. You can obviously game it, but generally that's the idea.
The data. There's a question which I think related to this, Maximilian, that's from you. Yeah, well, you have a comment on where you see OKRs and Scrum in this context. Do you want to elaborate on your question?
No, that was more a question for Andrea.
Yeah.
Right, because somehow, I mean, it also the question is what size of company are we talking about? Because many people here say, okay, we have a very small team, and like different things apply if you have a small team versus like some corporation, right? So I found like, I mean, or for me, the basics is you need to have a proper company vision, right? You need to have, you need to know what you want to do, what you want to achieve. You need to have near-term goals, business goals, right? That are definitely set. And this is where my question would be, right? Where do you see OKRs there, for example, right? As a framework, because also there you have OKR masters, you have people that like really do nothing more than facilitate and mediate, right? To help the company actually formulate these goals. And then you need to translate that into product goals, right? And then this is probably the world where you see. But if you don't have the framework around it, then yeah, you're like that's probably
Yes,
not your thing to solve as a product manager, right? That's then a company problem. And then underlying there, you have, and here we had the example for less Scrum, you have great frameworks that actually help you do that. Again, right, you have facilitators that their only job is to actually have the communication ongoing between product and tech.
Yeah.
So there are great frameworks around that actually solve exactly what you're saying, right? Talk and this is the whole thing, right? Talk and share information. And
I have lots of thoughts on that.
Yeah,
so
transparency is key. So if not everybody knows what's going on, then
yep. OKRs, I think it's very important that there are clear goals, that they are communicated and they are trickled down to whoever works on it. Then they need to be aware of how they contribute to the bigger goals. And it helps to break them down into smaller steps in between. If you just go to a developer and say, hey, your goal this year is to make the business successful, okay, you need a bit more information. I am not the biggest fan of rigid frameworks and stuff, because then you spend a third of your life just reminding people of the rigid framework. I like the ideas behind most of them. And so we do something like having goals that we define always together, then we hand it out to the next small unit again together. So like CTO, CPO, VP product, engineering manager, lead sit together. Then it goes down to the head of product, head of engineering. Then it goes to the PM, head of PM and engineering manager. And Scrum, I think Scrum has been very toxic for a lot of relationships because it is so strict in defining the roles and the boundaries. And I think that
you should read the newest Scrum guide, because lots of change there. I had the same opinion.
It sounds rather like a bad Scrum. It's not so rigid, actually.
No, the entire idea, it's a process framework. It's not, and it has those strict role descriptions, and I get it, right? If you write a framework, you need to have clear definitions of what something does. But then for me, that led to situations where somebody told me, you're a product owner, you must not care about those things because that is my job. And I was like, and like, it's just like, yeah, that's where I'm more of a, let's talk together and let's understand that we all want the same thing together, instead of having this strict guideline that you have to follow.
Just an example of like not well, like, Scrum is not that rigid in its definition of the roles anymore. I would say like in the past,
Good.
yes, and also in the past I encountered exactly the same as you described. But nowadays it's like very, very lax.
Yeah,
And only like very
didn't
clear
look at it in the
definitions
last
of
10 years.
responsibility.
Can't give up on it.
I think many people still remember the old approach.
That's actually really great if they learned and adjusted.
Yeah, maybe a little too late, but it doesn't matter now.
No,
I
hey,
think
they did it. That's cool.
It's yeah, it's good.
We need to
Like,
give a second life to Scrum now.
people will remember it for sure.
Hopefully. Andrea, like just to finish topic on objectives, because you mentioned that ideally for product and tech having the same objectives, right? Yeah, and the question is, if it's not the case in the organization, what argument would you bring to make it united objectives?
I don't know. I guess everything that was said today by everyone. I think those were all very great arguments for having joint objectives.
But do you see the teams also collaborating effectively when they have separate objectives, separate set of objectives? It shouldn't be like, of course, like completely going in opposite directions, but it's not the same.
I think it can work, but I think if it works, then it's more of an accident and less by design. Because you're basically, you are reinforcing the already naturally emerging bubbles and silos. Because yes, obviously engineers hang out more with engineers because they work together in a team. And if you also add then you have your goals as in this group, and then this other group has those other roles. And then sometimes you have two people working in a team having different sets of goals. Just, I don't know. Maybe somebody else can make sense of that, but I can't.
That's like my personal stance on that is that you should rely on common goal. So imagine you're running a restaurant and your goal is to provide the best possible food and customer experience for your clients. And that's your common goal that you aspire to achieve. And you measure this by the feedback you get from the customer. Was the food good? And what's the experience like? And then each team, the kitchen, has their own goals and own objectives that relate to this, making the best food. The servers have their own goals, for example, number of glasses dropped or the speed of delivery from the kitchen. And everyone should understand that, hey, by doing my own work well, we are together making the best possible food and providing the best possible service for our clients. So this should encourage collaboration and trying to help each other out, because building product or basically working with anywhere where you're working in a team, it's a team effort. Everyone needs to put their parts.
No, and like I totally get it, and I understand like need and should. I just maybe saw too many toxic cultures in teams, and when a team, like the product manager and the whole tech team, they share one goal, the goal is not achieved, and then they start to blame each other. So like for me as a manager, I wonder how I can get out of this, like, remove this problem and solve this, let's say, ineffective collaboration between the teams.
I think what you need to solve is the toxicity, the toxic thing, and then everything else will. There's this neat book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
That's kind of helpful, I think, for when you have a team like that, just like start with trust.
Thanks for the recommendation. I see a raised hand from Asha. just wanted to give
yes.
a word to someone who was silent before.
Yes. I'm actually very new to product management, so I have a bit of a novice question. I'm actually working as a junior product owner, and I have no tech background. I have a design background, and I really struggle to communicate with the lead developer, and because I don't understand a lot of stuff. And I know that the struggle is both ways, because they also struggle to break down stuff for me because I'm probably not knowledgeable enough. So I guess my question is, I know there's like a ton of resources for like new coders or people new to tech, but I'm wondering if like what advice you'd have for someone who wants to educate themselves in a more efficient way and getting to know, like, I don't actually want to be a coder, but how do I teach myself on what I should know in tech as a really, really junior PO?
Yes, forget about code. Nobody cares about that. Think about architectures and think about system design. And the best way to do that is like have somebody from your team walk you through the general high-level flow of how data moves around in the system, interaction points that your users have, and how that then goes all the way to the database and back again. And then that's something that I find that I have on the curriculum for my non-technical PMs that want to get into that. And then the other one is data flows, high-level architectures, and complexity. Complexity is really important. So you have to understand how complicated it is to compute something, because that will help you designing features that won't lead to a very, very bad user experience because you have 5-second wait times or something. So I'm going to write that in the chat.
Yes, that would be awesome.
Thanks for your question and good luck with learning how to communicate with your team.
Also chat me up on LinkedIn. I have it's a topic I really care about, so I have tons of more things to say about that. So just reach out.
Okay, it looks like we have a topic for the next event. Thank you.
Thank you.
I saw a raised hand. Now it's not raised anymore. Question. There is a question in the chat from Shari. You had a raised hand.
I was just, it was a couple of topics back when I raised my hand, and it was ultimately going to get to the notion of a corporate culture. I actually have the good fortune, I report into Andrea at commercetools, and what she's described, and we have our directives, they're very high level. So they're across the organization, there is a way for, they're written up broadly, and there's a way for everyone's goals to kind of fit within there. They're not so narrow in scope. And we're also working with a culture that is very empathetic across the board. And I think that's part of the key here. I know as a product manager, I can reach out to sales, I can reach out to someone from engineering across the business, and it's the empathy I lead with to understand where they're coming from and how what they need maybe fits into my roadmap, or vice versa, how my roadmap can address what they're asking for. And I think that toxicity that goes on in some organizations is going to kill all of this, but we foster a very collaborative and empathetic environment. It's a very special place, commercetools. I've only been there since November. And I have to say, it's the most amazing place where I've worked and things get done. I've worked in very large organizations. What I've never worked in is where we have absolute silos. We're always human and we're always working together on things. But if that overarching toxicity is there, it's just not going to work. That needs to be addressed.
Thanks for sharing, and also looks like a great advertisement for Andrea's team. Are you hiring, Andrea?
Who isn't? Yeah.
So guys, you know what to do. There's like a proper discussion in comments. I cannot even follow, but the original conversation was from Frederick. Would you like to share your question to get opinion from Andrea as well?
Sure,
Yeah, I see.
I can ask. Sorry, background noise. But yeah, I'm just curious more generally how not everyone, while I firmly embrace breaking down the silos and shifting to this more shared, experience, some people defend the silos. And I guess I'm wondering how do you measure, how do you make those, arguments that this is working? If you put a policy in place that says, for example, you need to share or make your meetings more open to other people, how do you then, reinforce that this is a positive thing? I guess that's my question.
I probably would start by trying to change the culture one person at a time, because if the mindset, or if you have people that strongly oppose that and you just try to solve that problem with a policy, they will find ways around it, right? So I would really try to have identify the people who wouldn't like it, and then have an open discussion about them. Most likely they'll have a reason why they don't like it. Maybe they're afraid. Honestly, most of the times when somebody doesn't like something, they're afraid, and they just want to be listened to, and they want to understand better.
Yeah, or they have some sense of I don't know if power is the right word, but influence.
Yes, then they
They're
are
going to have to
afraid to
give up.
lose influence, right?
Yes,
And it's
yeah.
like, no, you
Mhm.
won't.
Yeah.
So
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
I mean, just a counter argument. I think that silos sometimes make sense in certain situations, right? Like if you have a sort of a tiger team or a highly cohesive team that is tasked with something very urgent and they really need to focus on it, they sometimes it makes sense to isolate themselves from the rest of the organization in some way. It depends. There aren't, there it's all contextual, and of course in general the more you can collaborate within the organization. And even though I have a small company, we work with pretty big clients, and I worked with Yahoo and Nokia and some other really big companies before. And it's it what I have seen work really well in different sizes companies. uh, 3 years ago, I worked with one company in Berlin that I think was probably one of the best cultures I had seen, because they really worked very closely with the product manager. The product manager was completely heroic in his role, just trying to prepare the work for the developers, the designers as well, and the developers just ran with it after that. So and this was a 20 people company. Now I'm working with some company which is 700 or so people, and there you can see there are more silos which kind of slow down the communication. So it's, and I think somebody in the organization who's really responsible for the delivery. I think I have found this to be a very useful measure, is that if the teams are working well together, they tend to deliver faster and more. The cadence of release is pretty good, and the turnaround for issues and bugs and so on is also pretty good. So I think you can look out for problems that way. And if the question about how do you measure if openness is making things better, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, do we have better cadence? Our product, is the product more stable? Do we have less bugs? Is our net promoter score or whatever other score that you measure for happiness of the customer, is that getting better? I think that's it. And does the team look happier? Do they sound happier when they work with each other and when they are on calls, or are they all like checked out on long on calls you know, everybody muted and barely say anything. I think you can sense that excitement, but tangibly you can measure cadence. I think cadence is probably the best measure of how good a company and a team is doing. Is that
The cadence of
how,
delivery of releases, you mean, yeah?
yeah, the cadence
Mhm.
of being able to push even small changes, but you know, like just being able to release something, even if it's internal releases, but you actually can see progress in the product.
Mhm. I see. I see. I think we are, thank you, Mohammed, for sharing and so actively participating in our conversation. I'm going to save the chat because there's also so many good advice. We're almost out of time. So I think I just wanted to ask a last question from my side. Andrea, if like, what would you recommend a person who, a product manager or tech person who just joined a new team and then they see that collaboration is not working, where to start? Like, what is this first steps to take from your opinion?
Difficult. I think try to understand the reasons behind it. If the team does do retrospectives, which I think it's a thing right now, there should be some learnings to be found there, and then don't rush it. I think that's a key advice. Don't rush it. Don't try to go in there and change everything, and
I see.
because that's not going to work. Listen, learn, understand what's the reasons behind it, and then
I see. And this from your experience in like common reasons for broken collaboration, like lack of communication, I assume can be one reason. There anything else?
yeah, sometimes there's just also horrible team compositions, like when somebody higher up makes a decision that have to work with those 5 people, and because you're still junior, you think that arch enemies are a thing, and then you're forced to work with them. That's just not going to work out. Or something else, like if you have if the team is permanently stressed out because they are made to do things where they don't have the competencies within the team, if the culture is broken and there's just like a lot of blaming going on. But yeah, I think those are the things that I've seen.
Thank you for sharing. Any closing remarks? Mohammed, you have your hand raised, or it's permanent.
I am trying to unraise it, but it's
No.
just not working. I don't know what's going on there. I've been trying to unraise it forever. It's just...
Well, got it. Thank you so much.
Oh, look at that. It just worked.
Okay. Well, then it's a sign that we have to finish. I saved the chat, so if you missed some information, just contact me. I'm going to share it with you. Thank you so much for joining. Andreas, thank you so much for taking your time to prepare the presentation and for like making this conversation so live with this topic. I wish you a great evening. Thank you so much. See you around.
Thanks a lot. Have a nice
Thank you.
evening,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Andrea.